first step is talking to the customer and seeing, what kind of guitar they want it to sound like, and then we put the wood choices together for sound, and then it's all about how do you want it to look and feel and play and sound.
The short version of how to make a guitar is cut up the wood, get it dimensioned just right.
Once the body's together, then it goes onto the neck. The neck gets set on here. It needs to be at the right pitch. Otherwise, the strings might sit too high or too low.
Prep it for finish it, polish the finish.
And then it'll go to the setup room, which is where it gets the strings, it gets the nut and the saddle slot, all set.
And then there's the wiring up the electronics, putting it all together, playing it, doing the setup, and then taking pictures of it and sending it off to the client and hoping they're happy. Moved to Burlington in 1996 and have been playing guitar kind of casually for, 6 or 7 years prior to that, but also as a day job cutting up wood, and I realized I could merge those two things. It was sort of a, why didn't I think of this sooner kind of epiphany.
It's been a long journey to get here. I started as a guitar player, I guess, when I was in 5th grade. My family owned a manufacturing company in New York, and then moved up to Burlington in 2012. And that's when I really started, making more instruments under the Circle Strings brand name. Those were, custom-made one-off guitars for players that were, pretty expensive and highly detailed. I guess about 2017, 18, my friend Pat was working with me, and he said, why don't you try and make a guitar that's, a little cheaper? And that's when I started the Iris brand.
Playing on a stage somewhere, people would take note of it and realize it wasn't just like an off-the-rack guitar and come and ask them about it afterwards. Those people would look me up. And so I sort of went from just like a basement hobby to having a full-time job inside of a year.
Trey was, well, when I built the first guitar for him, he wasn't famous, but he became famous. And I can't put a price on that, really, And he's a successful player. People love their instruments. I don't know, for some reason, maybe guitars, they're a little bit anthropomorphized in some ways. If that makes sense, that people have more of a relationship like they might have with a pet or something like that. I don't know.
Gentleman came in last year and fell in love with an Iris guitar and ended up buying it and taking it home. And then he came back a couple months later and was thinking more and more about building out his collection further and getting something custom built for himself that was a little higher end. And so we started talking about Circle Strings, and then it was off to the races.
His name, it starts with a J. It's Jonathan. I don't know. I won't say his last name, but he approached us and asked us to build him a pretty special guitar out of old growth cedar for the top, and he really wanted to use the back and sides of a figured mahogany from a special tree from Belize called the tree.
The tree is it's a enormous mahogany tree that was felled back in the 70s. Took them years to figure out how to get it out of the jungle. And it sort of has this, mythical quality for multiple reasons. I think one is that, it's beautiful. It's this beautiful figured mahogany, and I've seen other figured mahogany, but none that's quite as beautiful and consistent as the tree is. There's not much of it left that isn't unmilled or turned into something already. So that part of this, the rarity, the scarcity, drives a lot of the prices of tone woods in particular for guitar building. We have an unmilled piece of it that was about 6 figures. So it's Will Hilton is doing the neck and inlay. Nick Durkee is the one who did the body build that you saw, and Will Esther will be doing the neck set. Andy Arizosa will be doing the finish, and Storm Gates will be doing the final setup on it.
So the acoustic guitar body is comprised of basically 3 main parts. The top, the back, and the sides are formed through a pretty simple process involving heat and water to loosen up the fibers of the wood enough to allow us to bend it over a shape or mold of the guitar that we're working on. Then ready to be taken out and be put into a separate mold called a boxing mold. Another way we can adjust the stiffness of a top is by adding braces to the inside of it in certain areas. And again, the goal there is just to add stiffness to the parts where you want it. But when you add braces, what you're also doing is adding weight. So what you want to do is then go in and carve away weight from the braces while still trying to maintain the strength that they're giving the top. The back goes through kind of a similar process. That strength to weight ratio isn't as important. You just want the back to be just solid. So once those 3 main parts are done, they can be assembled together in a process called boxing up, or actually assembling the body together. We'll add a material called kerfing or lining around the edges of the sides for extra surface area and a little bit of extra strength too. And everything will be lined up. The top and back will be lined up on center with the head and end block, and they'll be sandwiched together in a press. And once that is all dried up, they can be taken out of the press, it can be taken out of the mold the final time. The top and back usually have a little bit of a lip, so that'll be routed flush with the sides, and then once that's flush, the entire sides along with the edges and top and back. Once the binding is done, everything will be leveled and sanded flat and flush with each other. And then from there, it'll move on to Will, and he'll take care of the next set.
I'm the head CNC operator, programmer, engineer at the shop. Most modern guitar shops are gonna have some form of CNC capabilities. CNC stands for Computer Numeric Control. It's essentially a computer-guided robotic machine. You feed information to the machine, and in turn, it can create parts for you. There's 2 main types of software you're gonna need for CNC. One is CAD software, and the other is CAM software. CAD stands for Computer-Aided Design, and CAM stands for Computer-Aided Machining. With those programs, you are essentially drawing geometry, engineering the geometry on how you want it to work, and you can essentially create parts with the CNC from there. What we're doing in the CNC realm is subtractive machining, so you're starting with a larger object and milling it down to the desired shape you need. You see me engraving the neck blank first, which is laying out all of the information that I'm going to need. From there, it's flipped and machined precisely to the exact angles and specifications I need. From there, it's carved, and once it's measured, my job is complete. The part is inspected, measured, and then handed off to Will Esther, who's going to be fitting the guitar.
Yeah, so the first thing I do is when I get the neck, I kind of carve out a little hollow in the heel area. Then I just pull sandpaper through until it matches the heel of the neck up with the body as tightly as possible, and dial in all of my measurements so that the strings are gonna run straight across the neck and not be too high, not be off-centered. Glue the fretboard on, and then route the slots and start carving and sanding it. After I'm done with it, then I go put it on the shelf, and Andy will finish sand out the body, mask everything off, and then start spraying color and get some build coats on there.
I get the necks from Will Esther and just prepare them to get, color and clear, protective clear coat finish. So that's a lot of, masking off the portions that we don't want to have color or clear coat on, and then laying the stain down into the wood directly and applying the sealer and clear coat over the top of that color. With spray equipment, usually get about anywhere from 12 to 18 coats with sanding in between. We let it sit for a couple of weeks after all the coats have been applied, and then it gets a polish treatment with very high grit sandpapers, and then I hand the instrument off to Storm to be assembled and set up.
Yeah, so first it comes in parts, it's all taped up. I remove the tape and make sure I don't lift any of the lacquer that Andy has so lovingly gotten ready. Then you put the neck and the body together. I check the set of the neck and the bridge height, get it all glued up and then it goes into fingerboard planing and plec, which it scans, measures all the high and low spots on the fingerboard and gives it a perfect radius. Just a very important part of the process using that machine. And then it's time for appointments like tuners, nut and saddle, carving those by hand. At that point, it gets strung up, then it's going to be scanned again under the plec. So it's all scanned under tension, and the plec goes through and measures the frets this time and grinds those all down so you have a perfect plain fingerboard, machine perfect, yeah. Once it's all plecked and we'll polish the frets, I'll give it a quick QC, put it in a case, and ship it off to the customer. It's all good to go.
This is going to sound kind of weird, but it does make me feel sort of powerful. Not in a gross way. It's like wearing, you know, a piece of beautiful jewelry or something. Although, I don't wear a lot of jewelry, but I would wear this guitar as a piece of jewelry. This guitar it will rarely go out of tune. That was a big thing for me. I said, like, that's probably my number one thing, even compared to anything else. I just want it to be really solid so it doesn't go out of tune easily. I was really trusting Creston and giving him my thoughts about what I like to play. I would send him sounds of guitars. He would send me sounds with different pickups, what they sounded like. I knew I wanted something a little more intense sounding, I guess. Just every detail, there was every detail, you know, even, you know, what color I wanted the pick guard to be and what type of pick guard, and just every detail he asked me about. And of course I have my engraving. You probably heard this from a lot of musicians, like, I'm very socially awkward generally, actually. When I'm on stage and connecting with people in that way, like this sort of circle of like an unspoken sort of energy that happens, I feel more at home or more comfortable in the world than any other time, which is really weird, I guess.
You know, I'd say every week we get an email from somebody new who said, we got a guitar, you know, I've been looking for a guitar like this my whole life that I could afford, and most of them are either too expensive or just I haven't connected with. So when somebody says, you know, I've been playing guitar for 30, 40 years and I picked up your guitar and connected immediately and had to buy it, I mean, there's nothing better. Nothing better. When Trey Anastasio from Fish got his guitar, the day he got it, he came here and just said he loved it so much and connected with it immediately, and gave the whole shop a little acoustic concert with it. So that was definitely the best feeling I've ever had. He texted me the other day saying this will be my lifelong guitar and I'll never have another one, and you know, what could be better than that?